It's 1578. I'm burning with fever, and every healer could kill me. The physician bled me dry. The surgeon drained my blood. Even their cures were poison. The wealthy died fastest. Their doctors were confidently, dangerously wrong. I survived by refusing treatment. Could you have trusted your body over the doctors?
Welcome to Shakespeare's Satchel. If you enjoy these journeys into the bard's world, please like and subscribe. Where are you listening from tonight? It's January 1578, and you're waking in a small timber-framed house in Stratford-upon-Avon, the very town young William Shakespeare, a boy of 14, knows as home. A biting cold seeps through the cracks in the wattle and daub walls, even with the small banked fire in the hearth. You pull the rough wool blanket closer, but a shiver racks your body, deeper than the room's chill. Your head throbs and your throat feels like coarse sand. A fever has taken hold, and with it, a creeping dread. In this age, illness isn't just discomfort. It's a direct confrontation with the stark realities of life and death. As the morning light, pale and thin, filters through the oiled paper panes, you consider your options, each presenting its own terrifying gamble. There's the esteemed physician, a learned man with Latin scrolls, and a gown that speaks of Oxford or Cambridge. He practices humoral theory, believing health is a balance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. His diagnosis might begin with uroscopy, where he gravely examines, perhaps even tastes, your urine. To rebalance your humors, he'd likely prescribe aggressive bloodletting with leeches or a lancet, or a powerful purge of antimony, convinced he is draining away the bad humors, causing your fever. His treatments are costly, and his prestigious education, though making him confidently wrong, often leads to a quicker demise than the disease itself. Many a wealthy patient able to afford such rigorous care has died under the physician's hand. Then there is the barber-surgeon, whose shop is marked by a pole striped red for blood and white for bandages, a familiar sight on Henley Street. He pulls teeth, shaves beards, sets bones, and performs minor surgeries, all with practical, albeit brutal, efficiency. His methods are crude, his tools unsterilized. For a fever, he might suggest a cupping glass, drawing blood to the surface to vent the illness, a lesser bleeding than the physician's, but still risky. While he might fare better with an external wound, internal ailments like your fever are often beyond his understanding, and his interventions carry the terrifying risk of infection or further harm. Finally, you might seek the local wise woman, or cunning woman, whispered about in the village. She is accessible, less expensive, and relies on remedies passed down through generations. Some of her concoctions, like willow bark for pain, or certain herbs to calm a stomach, hold genuine, if unrefined, medicinal power. But others are rooted in superstition or folk knowledge, some even actively harmful. And there's the pervasive fear of accusation. In this era, effective healing by a woman, especially one without formal training, could easily be misconstrued as witchcraft, bringing dangers far worse than the fever itself. The harsh truth settles upon you. Seeking help might be more dangerous than doing nothing at all. Which path, then, do you dare to tread? The pervasive chill of the Stratford morning does little to ease the ache in your bones. Your breakfast of stale rye bread, softened with a mouthful of small beer, the weak, safe ale that serves as the common drink, barely settles in your stomach. The fever has tightened its grip, lending a sickly sheen to your skin and a profound weariness to your spirit. Despite the nagging fear of the physician's costly, aggressive methods, a deep-seated belief in learned authority, a respect for gentlemen of letters, guides your decision. You send a message, and by late morning a local apothecary physician, Master Elms, arrives at your humble dwelling. He is a man of grave demeanor, his spectacles perched on his nose, and a faint scent of dried herbs, and something acrid clinging to his woolen doublet, a fitted jacket worn over the shirt. He does not touch you, nor does he inquire about your discomfort directly. Instead, his eyes fall upon the chamber pot, requesting a sample. This is uroscopy, the cornerstone of diagnosis for centuries. He holds your urine to the light, swirling it, scrutinizing its color, clarity, and even the sediment that settles at the bottom. He mutters about the pisser prophets, who merely guess, but he himself relies on this age-old tradition. A moment of intense concentration, then a pronouncement. Your humors are unbalanced, specifically, an excess of hot, dry yellow bile, causing this melancholic fever. He believes a cold and moist imbalance, a common misdiagnosis for various fevers in this era, is taking hold. His prescription is confident, delivered with a professional air. To restore balance, he suggests a gentle purge with an infusion of senna and rhubarb, and recommends a diet of cooling foods like barley broth and lettuce, to combat the perceived heat within. He advises warm compresses of vinegar to draw out the noxious vapors from your head. While these initial steps seem benign enough, the underlying logic is flawed. The fever persists, mocking his learned pronouncements, and the purging leaves you weaker, your stomach cramped and sore. You follow his instructions diligently, yet the imagined warmth from the compresses provides no true relief from the internal fire. The confident pronouncements, designed to inspire trust, instead begin to sow a seed of doubt. You reflect on Master Elms's gravity, his unyielding faith in humoral theory, a framework that Shakespeare's characters often referenced, reflecting common beliefs of the time. This learned man, who could debate the intricacies of Galen and Hippocrates, possessed no true understanding of contagion or internal pathology. His methods, though less immediately drastic than those of a London physician, are no less rooted in a conceptual framework that actively misunderstands the human body. The gentle advice feels hollow, the discomfort real. You are learning, firsthand, that even the most educated healer of the age can be confidently, dangerously wrong. The purge prescribed by Master Elms has done little but hollow you out, leaving you frail and more feverish than before. The gentle remedies proved utterly ineffective, and the internal fire within your body continues to rage. Desperation begins to gnaw, pushing you towards a different kind of healer, one less concerned with scholarly theory, and more with the practical, if painful, application of force. You stumble through the cold Stratford air, guided by the familiar sight of the barber-surgeon's pole, painted with its distinctive spirals of red and white, red symbolizing blood, white for bandages. Inside Master Thorne's shop the air is thick with the metallic tang of old blood, mixed with the sharp scent of alcohol and the musky aroma of various poultices and shaved hair. A burly man with rolled-up sleeves and hands stained with various unguents looks up from trimming a customer's beard, his razor glinting in the dim light. This is Master Thorne, a man of practical trade, whose services encompass everything from a fresh shave to a difficult tooth extraction, and often, bloodletting. He sizes you up, his gaze missing the subtleties of a physician, but quickly noting the fevered flush on your cheeks and the sweat on your brow. Another flux, he grunts, his diagnosis as blunt as his methods. Like the physician, he believes in humoral imbalance, but his solution is direct. He proposes cupping, a method to draw out the excess heat from your body. You settle onto a wooden stool, bracing yourself. He heats several small glass cups over a flame, creating a vacuum, then quickly applies them to your back. You feel the sudden suction, a powerful pull on your skin that leaves angry red rings. Then with a small sharp lancet, a tiny knife, he makes several swift nicks on your skin before reapplying the cups. You wince as the dark, thick blood begins to pool within the glass, drawn forth by the vacuum. He observes it with a grim satisfaction, convinced he is draining the very source of your illness. The immediate effect is a dizzying weakness, a profound lethargy, as your life-giving fluid flows away. The fever, however, remains, perhaps even intensifying in your weakened state. This brute force attempt to rebalance your humors feels less like a cure, and more like an assault on your already fragile body. You understand now that Master Thorne, though more practical than the learned physician, is still a prisoner of the same flawed understanding of disease. His methods, while common and accepted, often pushed patients closer to death's door, rather than pulling them back. As you stumble home, the lingering taste of blood in your mouth, and the faint scent of the shop's mingled odors clinging to your clothes, you realize the desperate gamble you are making. With each attempt at a cure, the Stratford air, even a distant memory, still feels cold on your fevered skin. The physician's purges and the barber-surgeon's cupping have only weakened you further, leaving you racked with shivers and a persistent, throbbing ache behind your eyes. Your desperation has propelled you to London, a city teeming with life, and, you hope, a different kind of remedy. The sheer scale of London's maladies often gives rise to more flamboyant, if equally dubious, healers. You find yourself drawn into the boisterous chaos of a London fair, a vibrant tapestry of sounds and smells. The scent of roasting meat, stale ale and unwashed humanity hangs heavy, mingling with the cries of hawkers and the strumming of a lute. Your head pounds with the cacophony. Among the jugglers, beggars and peddlers, a large wooden booth stands out, adorned with painted signs boasting miraculous cures. A flamboyant figure, dressed in bright, if slightly soiled, silks, harangues a small crowd, holding aloft a vial filled with murky liquid. This is a quack doctor, a common sight at fairs, offering instant relief from every ailment under the sun. Often such men were also tooth pullers, demonstrating their gruesome trade for the amusement and horror of the crowd. The man, Master Gully, spots your fevered face. With a theatrical flourish, he declares your humors utterly corrupted, and offers his famed elixir of solace, a potent draught, he claims, that can banish any sickness. This elixir, likely a blend of strong herbs, alcohol, and perhaps a touch of laudanum, an opium derivative, promises immediate comfort, not necessarily a cure. He details how it will purge the dark vapors from your blood. You feel a pang of weariness, another purging. Yet his confidence is infectious, and the traditional remedies have only made you worse. You hand over a few pence, the cost surprisingly steep for such a street-side cure. He pours a generous measure into a small tarnished pewter cup. The liquid is thick, cloyingly sweet, with a bitter medicinal aftertaste that makes you gag. Almost immediately, a strange warmth spreads through your stomach, followed by a dizzying rush to your head. For a brief moment, the fever's edge seems to dull, replaced by a hazy, pleasant numbness. But this respite is fleeting. Soon your stomach clenches, and the world begins to spin violently. The powerful concoction, intended to heal, instead induces a furious fit of vomiting and purging, far more violent than anything Master Elms had prescribed. You are left weaker, trembling, the fair's distant din mocking your futile attempt at solace. You stumble away from the booth, the irony bitter in your mouth. In this age, even the promise of comfort is a dangerous gamble. The London fair's chaotic energy, the supposed elixir, all faded into a blur of renewed misery. Your fever is now a consuming inferno, and the purges have stripped you of strength, leaving you too weak to even fetch water from the nearest public well, its heavily used bucket now feeling impossibly heavy. The water, a source of life, is often a source of disease in this crowded city, yet a necessary evil. Desperate, and with coin now scarce, you turn to the whispered-about wise woman, or cunning woman, as some call her, who lives on the outskirts of the sprawling city. You manage the arduous journey to her small, crooked cottage, tucked away from the main thoroughfares, its thatched roof stained with age and damp. The air inside is warm and thick with the scent of drying herbs, a comforting contrast to the stench of the city. Bundles of chamomile, mugwort and comfrey hang from the rafters, rustling softly in the faint breeze from the perpetually open door. Mother Agnes, a woman with gnarled hands and eyes that miss nothing, ushers you to a stool by her hearth, where a pot of something fragrant bubbles gently. She doesn't consult books, or examine your urine, but rather studies your face, your labored breathing, and the frantic pulse in your neck. Her diagnosis is simple, a fever of the humors, but more for want of true physic than anything else. She blames the aggressive treatments of the gentlemen doctors for your weakened state. She prepares a bitter infusion, telling you it contains willow bark, a common remedy for aches and fevers, and a pinch of foxglove, a powerful herb used to strengthen the heart. Though in her unmeasured hands, its beneficial effects are a gamble against its inherent toxicity. Both plants, unknown to her, hold compounds that modern medicine would later refine into aspirin and digoxin. She speaks of aligning with the moon's phases for stronger healing, and applies a poultice of mashed plantain leaves to your forehead, hoping to draw out the fever's heat. You swallow the bitter draught, praying for relief. The willow bark dulls the headache, a small mercy, but the foxglove, even in small amounts, makes your heart race uncomfortably, a frightening palpitation. You feel a fragile hope warring with the deep fear that this too might be a step closer to the grave. Though Mother Agnes's methods offer glimmers of genuine efficacy, the line between healing and harm in her practice is perilously thin. And in an era where accusations of witchcraft could lead to execution, her very effectiveness, if too pronounced, could put her, and by association you, in grave danger. You realize that even in seeking solace from folk remedies, you are still navigating a landscape where the cure can be as terrifying as the disease. The discomfort from the wise woman's strong, unmeasured draught of foxglove and willow bark has subsided. But the fever, a relentless enemy, now holds you in an even tighter embrace. Your head swims, your joints ache with a dull, persistent throb, and your skin feels both searing hot and clammy cold. The grand pronouncements of the physician, the brutal efficiency of the barber-surgeon, and the potent, yet unpredictable remedies of the cunning woman have all failed, each leaving you weaker, more vulnerable. As you lie shivering, a kind neighbor, Mistress Ilara, a housewife known for her practical wisdom and deft hands, takes pity. She does not boast of cures or ancient texts, but offers the gentle comfort of her own knowledge, passed down through generations of women tending to their families. Her small, tidy kitchen, warm with the scent of wood smoke and simmering broth, feels like a sanctuary. She sits by your bedside, her hands, accustomed to kneading dough and mending cloth, now carefully sorting through a basket of dried leaves and blossoms. You watch her slender fingers separate the delicate petals of feverfew from the more robust sprigs of rosemary. Mistress Ilara explains that rosemary, often woven into bridal wreaths, is also good for memory, and keeping away evil humors. She believes it clears the mind of the fever's fog. The feverfew, she tells you, is specifically for the headache of the spirits, a throbbing pain many in the village swear it soothes. She crushes the dried feverfew blossoms and steeps them in warm, small beer, creating a mild, earthy infusion. The liquid is warm, a comforting contrast to the cold sweat that dampens your brow. You drink it slowly, the taste surprisingly pleasant, a blend of bitterness and the faint malt of the ale. She also suggests a poultice of crushed fresh mint leaves, held against your temples with a clean linen cloth, for the persistent throbbing. For a time the mint cools your burning skin, and the feverfew seems to soften the relentless pounding behind your eyes. This domestic care, born of community and shared experience, feels gentler, more compassionate than the previous, often violent, attempts at healing. Yet, as the quiet hours pass, the fever still simmers, a stubborn ember in your chest. You realize that while Mistress Ilara's remedies are less dangerous, their efficacy against a serious ailment is still limited by the era's fundamental lack of understanding. In this world, even the most well-meaning hands can only offer fleeting comfort, and the ultimate struggle for survival remains yours alone. The fever has not merely intensified, it has transformed into a malevolent force, dragging you from Stratford's quiet streets to London's plague-ridden alleys in your desperate search for relief. Your previous attempts at healing have only depleted your strength and coin. Now, with the city gripped by the terrifying outbreak of 1603, the air itself feels heavy with dread, and the acrid smell of burning rosemary, meant to ward off miasma, the bad air believed to cause disease. The streets are eerily quiet, save for the mournful cry of, "Bring out your dead." Your own door now bears the chilling mark of a large red cross, and the words, "Lord have mercy upon us," scrawled above it, a grim decree of forced isolation. You lie sweating, consumed by the relentless heat of your body, as a figure cloaked in heavy waxed canvas, his face hidden behind a grotesque beaked mask stuffed with aromatic herbs, enters your dimly lit room. This is a plague doctor, a figure of terrifying authority, whose very appearance signals the gravest of diagnoses. He carries a long wooden stick which he uses to prod and examine you, avoiding direct touch. His eyes, peering through the glass lenses of his mask, hold no warmth, only a detached professional interest in your rapid demise. His diagnosis is swift and blunt. You suffer from the pestilence, the dreaded bubonic plague that regularly ravages London, forcing playhouses like Shakespeare's Globe to close their doors. He nods sagely, satisfied with his grim assessment, and produces a small ornate pot. Inside is a thick blackish paste, his prized theriac, a so-called cure-all. This ancient compound, a concoction of dozens of ingredients, including viper's flesh, opium, and often small amounts of lead or mercury, is believed to draw out the poison. He claims this potent remedy will sweat out the infection, though he offers no real explanation of how such a complex mixture works, only a firm belief in its power. He instructs you to swallow a large spoonful of the acrid paste, promising swift relief, even as the irony gnaws at you. The remedies of the learned physician, the pragmatic barber-surgeon, the intuitive wise woman, and the flamboyant quack, have all failed, leaving you weaker. Now this man of science, cloaked in protective ignorance, offers a huff cure that feels like a final desperate gamble. The theriac's metallic, herbal taste lingers on your tongue, and a profound weariness washes over you. You are acutely aware that taking this, a concoction potentially toxic itself, could be the very thing that pushes you beyond recovery. The line between death by disease and death by a cure has never been so frighteningly thin. The theriac, that potent cure-all, forced upon you by the plague doctor in his beaked mask, has settled in your stomach with a leaden weight. A strange delirium descends, separate from the fever's fire. Your head spins, not with heat, but with a dizzying disorientation, and a profound nausea churns deep within. The taste of mercury or opium, common ingredients in such concoctions, now seems to coat your tongue, metallic and bitter. You are not better, you are acutely, terrifyingly worse. Outside your door, marked with its stark red cross, and the somber inscription, "Lord have mercy upon us," the parish is unnaturally quiet. The familiar hum of London life, the clatter of cartwheels, the cries of street vendors, the distant tolling of St. Paul's bells, has faded to an eerie hush. This is the silence of quarantine, a terrifying stillness that presses in on your small, fevered world. You hear only your own ragged breath, the frantic thumping of your heart, and perhaps, occasionally, the muffled sound of a cart rumbling past, carrying away the dead. The air is stagnant, heavy with unspoken fear. As the theriac continues its insidious work, a frightening realization dawns through the haze. Each intervention, from the learned physician's purges, to the barber-surgeon's crude cupping, to the wise woman's potent herbs, and finally, this plague doctor's toxic remedy, has done nothing but strip you of strength and vitality. They have not battled the fever, they have battled you. Your body is fighting not only the invisible disease, but also the well-intentioned, yet deadly attempts to cure it. The very treatments meant to save you have become life-threatening assaults. A moment of desperate clarity cuts through the fog. The only path forward, the only chance for survival, is to reject all further help. To simply stop. To let your own body, frail as it is, fight its silent war, without the added burden of toxic concoctions, or weakening bloodletting. The decision is stark, born of sheer terror, and grim understanding. You will consume no more purges, no more bitter draughts. You will rely solely on the thin hope that your own resilience, your own will to live, might be enough. In the profound silence of your quarantined room, surrounded by the remnants of failed remedies, you cling to this quiet resolution. It is a grim irony that in the terrifying world of Elizabethan medicine, where prestigious education often meant confident error, the most effective, treatment, might be to simply let nature, however brutal, take its course. Perhaps doing nothing is in itself a perilous path to healing. The low, rhythmic thrum of the loom fills the weaver's workshop, a comforting, familiar sound that now feels like a testament to life itself. It is a new year, 1604, and the terrifying fever that gripped you last winter has loosened its hold, receding like a nightmare. You stand at your loom, the shuttle flying back and forth through the warp threads, adding to the growing bolt of woolen cloth. Your back aches, a dull, persistent protest from the long hours bent over the frame. But it is an ache of labor, not of looming death. The scent of raw wool, damp wood, and faint dye permeates the air, a humble, grounding aroma. The recovery has been slow, a gradual reassertion of strength against the ravages of both disease and cure. After the plague doctor's potent theriac, and your desperate decision to refuse any further intervention, days blurred into a haze of sleep and fitful waking. You survived, not through the esteemed physician's costly purges, nor the barber-surgeon's brutal cupping, nor the wise woman's potent risky herbs. You survived through sheer will, a strong constitution, and perhaps the unintentional wisdom of doing nothing at all. The very treatments intended to heal had threatened to kill, leaving you weaker, more vulnerable to the disease they claimed to combat. You recall the metallic taste of antimony, the burning sensation of a poultice, the dizzying weakness of blood drawn. Each memory is a testament to the misguided confidence of an age, before germ theory, before anesthesia, before antibiotics. The doctors, for all their learning and prestigious degrees, were confidently wrong. Their remedies, often more dangerous than the malady itself. It is a grim humor to realize that the wealthiest patients, able to afford the most aggressive learned treatments, often succumbed fastest. Their privilege in this context was a deadly burden. Now, as you meticulously guide the weft through the warp, the simple, repetitive motion of weaving is a meditation on resilience. Your aching back is a reminder of the physical demands of Elizabethan life, but also a symbol of hard-won vitality. The experience has etched a profound, if dark, understanding into your soul. In this perilous age, the best medicine often meant avoiding the healers altogether, trusting instead to the mysterious, often brutal fortitude of the human body. The rhythm of the loom continues, a steady beat in the tapestry of your restored life, a quiet victory in a world where survival was a constant, harrowing gamble. The rhythmic clatter of the loom continues, a steady heartbeat in the weaver's workshop. You dip your hands into a vat of simmering dye, the deep, earthy smell of madder root, rising in a gentle cloud, promising a rich crimson for the threads. The rough wool, still clinging to lanolin, feels coarse and vital in your fingers. This world of tangible textures and purposeful sounds is a stark contrast to the ethereal, terrifying delirium of your fever, a memory that still chills you despite the comforting warmth from the dye vats. Your body, though still prone to aches from the strenuous work, has reclaimed its strength. You survived, a whispered testament to luck and perhaps a stubborn constitution, but certainly not to the array of treatments imposed upon you. The elegant physician's expensive purges, designed to rebalance your humors, had only drained you of strength. The barber-surgeon's crude cupping had left you weak and dizzy, extracting precious blood rather than illness. Even the wise woman's potent herbs, while holding some truth, were a perilous gamble of dosage. And the plague doctor's theriac, laden with mercury and opium, had pushed you to the very precipice, making you question if the cure common swifter to kill than the disease itself. The bitter irony is not lost on you. In this age, before germ theory revealed the unseen enemies, before anesthesia offered respite from agony, before antibiotics offered true salvation, confidence in flawed theories often led to aggressive, fatal interventions. The learned men, with their astrological charts and scholarly texts, were frequently more dangerous than doing nothing at all. You recall how wealthy patients, those who could afford the most rigorous treatments, often succumbed fastest to the relentless ministrations of their doctors. This grim truth, a shadow lingering in the corners of Shakespeare's tragedies and comedies alike, was a pervasive, unspoken reality of Elizabethan life. As you lift the dyed yarn, now a vibrant red, from the steaming vat, the vibrant color feels like a symbol of hard-won life. The scent of the dyes, the feel of the wool, these simple, honest realities ground you. You have learned a profound lesson from the terrifying journey through Elizabethan medicine. Sometimes, the greatest act of survival is the refusal of help, trusting the body's own mysterious, often brutal, fight. This quiet understanding settles over you, a peaceful contemplation in the heart of a bustling workshop, where resilience is woven into every thread. The year is 1605, and a sweltering midday heat presses down on London, making the very air thick and humid. You navigate a narrow alley near the notorious Fleet Ditch, its open channel choked with refuse, emitting a truly formidable stench of human waste and stagnant water that makes your eyes water. The usual bustle of London is dulled by the oppressive warmth, but the foul odors are intensified, a constant reminder of the city's precarious sanitation. Your own terrifying brush with fever and cures, years prior, has left you with a deep, personal understanding of this era's medical barbarities, and a healthy skepticism towards any who claim to heal. As you pass a particularly grimy building, its sign proclaiming, Master Bartholomew, Barber and Chirurgeon, a low moan of agony slices through the heavy air. You pause, peering through a grimy window into the dimly lit interior. There, upon a rough wooden table, lies a man, his face ashen, held down by two apprentices. Master Bartholomew, a beefy man with a leather apron stained crimson, wields a saw. He is preparing for an amputation, a common yet terrifying procedure. This is surgery before anesthesia, a reality Shakespeare vividly captures in his historical plays, where injury often meant certain disfigurement or death. The poor man will feel every agonizing cut, his screams momentarily deafening the market's distant hum. You watch, horrified, as Master Bartholomew begins his grim task, the glint of steel terrifyingly clear, even from a distance. He works with speed, for time is of the essence not for pain relief, but to complete the ordeal before shock claims the patient. The air itself feels heavy with the promise of infection, a silent, invisible killer that will likely claim this man, even if he survives the initial surgery. Before germ theory, doctors and surgeons alike had no concept of invisible contagions. Their tools were unsterilized, their hands unwashed, their understanding of hygiene non-existent. The wound, once expertly sewn, would be dressed with whatever poultices and bandages were at hand, often merely delaying the inevitable onset of putrefaction and fever. You turn away, the image seared into your mind, the stench of the Fleet Ditch suddenly more bearable than the imagined scent of fresh blood and desperate fear. You understand, with a chilling clarity, the harrowing choices faced by those afflicted with broken bones or gangrenous limbs. The immediate pain of the amputation, or the slower agony of disease, with infection as the inevitable third companion. It is a stark reminder of the fragile thread of life in this age, and the grim reality that sometimes, even a successful intervention merely prolongs suffering towards an inevitable end. You walk away with a profound sense of gratitude for your own survival, a silent understanding that avoiding the surgeon's blade might truly be the best path to long life. The year is 1605, and the oppressive London heat follows you even to the tanner's yard. Here the air assaults your senses with the harsh, acrid smell of lime, used to strip hides, mingling grotesquely with the pungent stench of rotting animal skins and the damp earth. The sloshing of curing vats and the heavy thud of mallets on wet leather create a dismal rhythm. This world of crude industry, far from the scholarly physician's chamber or the wise woman's cottage, offers a brutal, tangible reality that medicine in this era often mirrored. Your own harrowing survival from fever years ago has etched a deep suspicion into your soul regarding the healers of this age. You understand that the line between healing and harm is blurred, often dangerously so. Now, as you pass the open shed where Master Finch the tanner toils, you overhear a hushed, desperate conversation. His young son, Thomas, is suffering from the Pasagan stone, a bladder stone causing him excruciating agonizing pain that has wasted his small body. Thomas's mother, her face etched with exhaustion and terror, is weighing the desperate choice of a bladder stone removal. This procedure, known as cutting for the stone, is one of the most agonizing and perilous surgeries of the era, performed without any form of anesthesia beyond perhaps a swig of strong ale. It involves slicing into the patient's perineum to extract the stone. The odds of survival are shockingly low. Even if the child endures the unspeakable pain of the knife, the likelihood of a fatal infection in a wound exposed to the raw, unsanitary environment, perhaps even within the very tanner's yard itself, is almost certain. Before germ theory, the concept of invisible contaminants was unknown, and the surgeon's unwashed hands and unsterilized tools were themselves agents of death. You imagine the piercing screams, the gush of blood, and the subsequent days of fever that would inevitably follow, the body consumed not by the stone but by the unseen terrors introduced by the Cella cure. The choice for Thomas's parents is no choice at all, but rather a selection of horrors. To do nothing means a slow, agonizing death from the stone. To undergo the surgery means a swift, agonizing pain, followed by an almost certain, equally agonizing infection. This grim reality underscores the grim humor of Elizabethan medicine, a solution often worse than the original problem. As you leave the tanner's yard, the stench of lime and decay seems to cling to you, a stark reminder of the terrible gambles human beings were forced to make with their very lives. The year is 1607. A decade after your own harrowing ordeal, and you find yourself in a small, dimly lit room in a London tenement, a place far removed from the weaver's workshop. The air is thick and warm, heavy with the scent of lavender and old linen, mixed with the sharp tang of sweat and human exertion. A low, guttural moan escapes from a figure half hidden by shadows on the bed. This is the perilous landscape of childbirth in Elizabethan England, a time when bringing new life into the world often meant risking your own. Beside the bed, a woman with kind, weary eyes and strong hands sits attentively. This is Mistress Ilara, the same neighbor who once offered you simple, effective herbal comfort. She serves as the midwife, her knowledge passed down through generations, her presence a familiar, trusted sight at such a sacred yet terrifying threshold. Her voice is a soft murmur, offering words of encouragement, prayers, and sometimes, a small spoonful of herbal concoction to ease the mother's pain or strengthen her resolve. She understands the rhythms of the body, a deep, intuitive wisdom often dismissed by the formally educated. In this era, maternal mortality is tragically common, a reality that shapes every family's life, and the plays of Shakespeare, where death is never far from birth. You watch her, observing the quiet confidence born of experience. Her methods are gentle, focusing on patience and natural progression. There are no lancets, no toxic purges, no grand pronouncements of humoral imbalance. She understands the limitations of her craft, and her interventions are minimal, primarily supportive. Yet in wealthier households, a different figure might be called the male physician. While a learned man, he often possessed little practical experience in birthing, having been taught from books rather than by hands-on observation. His interventions, often driven by a theoretical understanding of the body, could be disastrous. He might be quick to use instruments without understanding sterility, or prescribe vigorous bloodletting, convinced it would ease the passage, but instead weakening an already exhausted mother. The contrast is stark. The midwife, with her compassionate and less invasive approach, often offered a safer, if still precarious path. The male physician, with his prestigious education, carried the increased risk of active harm through well-intended but tragically ignorant treatments. As the hours tick by, marked by the rising and falling cries, you reflect on the profound vulnerability of both mother and child. In this era, even the beginning of life is fraught with choices, each carrying its own deadly gamble. And often, the quiet, humble wisdom of tradition, imperfect as it was, proved to be a far gentler hand than the confident, yet often fatal logic of academic medicine. The air in the birthing room is cooler now, the lingering tension slowly easing into a fragile peace. A tiny, reedy cry pierces the quiet, a sound both vulnerable and profoundly powerful. Beside you, Mistress Elara, the midwife, gently places a swaddled bundle into the mother's exhausted arms. The newborn, a testament to life's stubborn will, is tiny and wrinkled, its delicate skin still mottled from the ordeal. You reach out, feeling the rough wool of the swaddling cloth against your fingers, wrapping the infant snugly to shield it from the ever-present cold that creeps through the floorboards. This simple act of protection, this innate human care, feels more potent than any physician's remedy. Your own survival, years prior, has granted you a unique lens through which to view this new life. You remember the fever's fire, the desperate choices, the confident pronouncements of learned men that nearly proved fatal. The physician's costly purges, the barber-surgeon's brutal cupping, the quack's toxic elixir, the plague doctor's ominous theriac, each in its own way, had drained you, not just of health, but of hope. You had survived, not coxetergic or asterisk of their interventions, but often in spite of them, by clinging to a desperate intuition to simply endure. This fragile new life, entering a world devoid of germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, will face similar perils, navigating a landscape where the body's own resilience is often the truest healer. As the infant stirs, its tiny hand grasping at the air, a quiet understanding settles within you. In this era, when education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed, simply avoiding their aggressive practices was often the best path to health. The humble common folk, like Mistress Elara, with their generations-old knowledge, and compassionate, less invasive methods, often offered a gentler, sometimes more effective path than the prestigious but flawed academic medicine. The irony is stark. While wealth could afford the most celebrated physicians, it also often led to the most aggressive and ultimately fatal care. The quiet breath of the newborn fills the room, a soft counterpoint to the distant sounds of London. This tiny life, so dependent and vulnerable, is also a symbol of profound strength, capable of weathering the unseen challenges of this harsh world. You have lived through the terrifying reality, where seeking treatment could mean choosing your method of death. Now holding this swaddled child, you realize the deepest truth of Elizabethan survival. That sometimes, the wisest course of action is to trust in the inherent, miraculous power of life itself, and to let the healing simply happen. The year is 1608, a chilling late autumn evening in London, and a dense fog curls through the narrow streets, muffling the usual clamor. You stand by your shuttered window, listening, not for sounds of revelry, but for the rhythmic, distant call of the night watchman, his lantern a faint glow battling the encroaching darkness. "Past 12 o'clock and a frosty morning," he cries, his voice carrying an inherent tension, a reminder of the city's vulnerable sleep. The air inside your humble dwelling, despite the small hearth fire, feels damp and heavy, carrying the faint, persistent scent of coal smoke and river mud. Across the cobbled lane, in the imposing timbered house of Master Hemming, a wealthy merchant, you note the hurried movements of shadows behind the oiled paper panes. A hushed urgency hangs in the night. You learned earlier from a passing neighbor that Mistress Hemming, the merchant's wife, has been taken with a sudden, violent fever. The night, often a time when fevers worsened, also amplified the desperate decisions regarding medical aid. Your own harrowing journey through illness years ago has granted you a grim insight into the perils of seeking help in this age. You understand the fear that grips their household, a fear intertwined with the deadly options for cure. You imagine the family, distraught, likely already sending for a physician, a man of prestige, whose fees are as steep as his confidence. Such learned men often consulted astrological charts, believing the alignment of planets dictated the course of illness and the efficacy of treatments. They would pronounce on the BC melancholy humors or choleric imbalance based on the stars, a diagnosis as grand as it was unscientific. These pronouncements, often accompanied by elaborate, expensive concoctions, served to impress, but rarely to heal. You know that for Mistress Hemming, her wealth, which buys her access to the most celebrated doctors, ironically, increases her risk. The wealthy often suffered the most aggressive treatments, dying faster under the hands of confidently wrong physicians who bled, purged and poisoned with relentless vigor, convinced they were battling the humors. The night watchman's call again, closer this time, cuts through the stillness. "All's well," he declares, a stark contradiction to the anxiety that permeates the fog-laden street. You reflect on the myriad superstitions surrounding disease in Shakespeare's era. Evil airs, malefic planetary influences, even the wrath of God. These beliefs shaped a medical landscape where fear reigned, and solutions were often worse than the affliction. You know that Mistress Hemming, lying in her silk sheets, is in more danger from the zealous physician's coming intervention than from the fever itself. As the darkness deepens, you find yourself praying for her to have the quiet strength to simply survive the night, and perhaps the good fortune to be left alone. The year is 1608, a chilly, damp evening, and you find yourself seeking respite in a crowded, low-beamed tavern inn in London, far from the familiar clatter of the weaver's loom. The air is thick with the competing aromas of stale ale, pipe tobacco, and damp wool, mingled with the faint, comforting scent of burning logs from the enormous hearth. Low murmurs and the clinking of pewter tankards fill the space, a symphony of weary travelers and local tradesmen. Yet an undercurrent of unease threads through the merriment, a pervasive reminder of the era's precarious health. Your own survival from the terrifying fever years ago has left you with a profound, if grim, wisdom. You remember the aggressive purges, the draining cupping, the potent, unpredictable herbs, and the plague doctor's toxic theriac, each step a gamble with death. You know with a chilling certainty that your survival was less about the cures and more about the innate, stubborn resilience of your own body, a body that miraculously endured in spite of being actively assaulted by its healers. As you sip your own tankard of small beer, a safer alternative to the city's often contaminated water, you observe a merchant by the roaring fire, his face pale, a persistent cough racking his frame. His companion, a younger man, speaks gravely of a physician he knows, a man of learning from St. Paul's Cathedral district, who consults not only urine samples but also astrological charts to determine the proper alignment of humors and stars. He promises powerful remedies, costly and rigorous, to expel the melancholy that supposedly grips the merchant. This echoes the very diagnosis dangers you faced, where the confident pronouncements of esteemed physicians, often rooted in humoral theory and astrological medicine, could lead to dire consequences and actively hasten a patient's demise. You reflect on the terrifying irony. In this age, doctors' prestigious education often made them confidently wrong, their treatments actively killing patients. The wealthy, like Master Hemming in your old neighborhood, could afford the most aggressive learned interventions, and often, tragically, died faster for it. The wisdom of the wise woman, though risky, offered a glimpse of effective herbalism, a knowledge often dismissed by the learned. The merchant's decision, whether to submit to such aggressive, untested methods, or to simply endure, is a silent, life-or-death choice echoing across every stratum of Elizabethan society. The fire crackles, casting dancing shadows on the low-beamed ceiling, and the distant call of the night watchman drifts through the inn's thick walls. You are a survivor, now understanding that sometimes, in this dark world before germ theory or antibiotics, avoiding doctors altogether was indeed the best medicine. This quiet, hard-won knowledge settles around you, a unique companion in the bustling inn, a testament to the enduring, often unseen strength required to simply exist in Shakespeare's England. You recognize that trusting in your body's own fierce fight was, perhaps, the most profound cure of all. The year is 1609, a crisp London morning, and a thin milky light filters through the grimy panes of Master Alwyn's apothecary shop. You step inside, leaving behind the chilly dampness of the narrow lane, and are immediately enveloped by a cacophony of competing scents. Dried herbs, pungent rosemary, sweet lavender, bitter wormwood, mingle with the sharp tang of spirits, the dusty aroma of ground minerals, and the faint, unsettling whiff of something metallic, almost sickly sweet. The rhythmic scrape and thud of a pestle against a mortar fills the air as Master Alwyn, a lean man with flour-dusted hands, meticulously grinds ingredients on his polished wooden counter. This is the domain of the apothecary, a vital yet often unwitting agent in Elizabethan medicine. They are the alchemists of health, preparing the complex remedies prescribed by physicians, often drawing directly from the ancient texts of Galen and Hippocrates, long before germ theory or modern chemistry offered true understanding. You watch Master Olwyn, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he measures out powdered bone, dried viper skin, and a minute pinch of a glittering grey substance, likely antimony, a toxic heavy metal, or perhaps even mercury, commonly used for ailments like syphilis, though its poisoning effects were severe, and often mistaken for further illness. These are the powerful ingredients meant to rebalance the humus, to purge, to sweat, to cure. Your own harrowing survival from fever years ago has etched a deep and abiding skepticism within you. You recall the taste of antimony in a physician's purge, the dizzying weakness that followed, the profound nausea. You know with a grim certainty that many of these elaborate concoctions, prepared with such diligent care, were not just ineffective, but actively harmful. The sheer confidence in these ancient, often flawed medical theories meant that patients were routinely subjected to treatments that drained their vitality, poisoned their systems, or induced violent, weakening reactions, all in the name of healing. As Master Olwyn continues his precise, almost ritualistic work, blending potent substances with meticulous attention, you realize the profound irony. This hard-working craftsman, dedicated to his trade, is unwittingly preparing compounds that could kill as readily as they might, by sheer chance, alleviate. The distinction between remedy and poison is often a matter of context and quantity, poorly understood in this era. The bell above the door jingles as a wealthy lady's servant enters, carrying a physician's elaborate prescription, seeking another potent draught for his ailing mistress. You observe the exchange, understanding that her class, ironically, ensures she receives the most aggressive and potentially most dangerous interventions. In this world, the apothecary's skill, however dedicated, is often in service to a medical philosophy that makes choosing treatment a terrifying gamble with one's very life. The year is 1610, and you find yourself in the elegant, if dimly lit, study of Master Phineas Finch, a physician of considerable renown, whose house stands proudly near Cheapside in London. The air here, unlike the apothecary's shop, is subtle, scented with dried rose petals and expensive imported spices, meant to ward off miasma and lend an air of refinement. Books bound in rich leather line the walls, and a polished brass astrological sphere sits upon a heavy oak table, its intricate rings glinting in the soft light from a single tallow candle. This is the inner sanctum of Elizabethan medicine's highest echelon, where intellect, rather than brute force or folk wisdom, is the proclaimed healer. A young woman, Lady Eleanor, lies weakly upon a nearby couch, her face pale, her breath shallow. Her mother, draped in rich silks, watches with desperate eyes. Dr. Finch, a man of grave countenance in a velvet gown, approaches with a practiced solemn air. He does not touch Lady Eleanor beyond a brief, cool brush of his fingers on her wrist to gauge her pulse. His primary diagnostic tools are intellectual and mystical. First, he gazes intently at a small phial of her urine, swirling it, scrutinizing its color and sediment, much like Master Elms did years ago in Stratford. He murmurs about the cloudy aspect and thin consistency, hinting at a significant internal disorder. Next, his attention turns to the astrological sphere, his brows furrowed in concentration. He consults complex charts, noting the position of the planets and their perceived influence on Lady Eleanor's birth chart and current illness. He speaks of Saturn's heavy influence, foretelling a melancholy distemper, an imbalance of black bile, and an unfavorable aspect of the moon. His diagnosis is grand, woven with cosmic significance, and delivered with unshakable confidence. He will prescribe a powerful purging draught, richer and more complex than any you've encountered, and likely recommend aggressive bloodletting to rebalance these errant humors and appease the celestial forces, drawing out the cold, dry influences that he believes have poisoned her. You recall your own terrifying encounter with such learned confidence. The sheer intellectual elegance of humoral theory, intertwined with astrological beliefs, offered an explanation for illness that felt comprehensive, even if it was utterly wrong. The irony is stark. This elaborate, costly diagnosis, far from illuminating the true path to healing, often led directly to a patient's demise. Lady Eleanor, in her wealth, can afford the very best that Elizabethan medicine offers, yet it is this privilege that places her in the greatest peril. Her body, already weakened by sickness, will now be further assaulted by treatments designed by confident minds, utterly ignorant of the microscopic battles raging within her. As Dr. Finch turns to his books, preparing to formulate his impressive, yet ultimately deadly course of action, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, the greatest dangers often came not from ignorance, but from the most educated, confidently wrong hands. The fragile peace of the study belies the active threat brewing within its refined walls. The year is 1611, a deep winter morning, and you walk a country lane outside London, the frost-hardened ruts crunching beneath your sturdy boots. The air is so sharp it stings your lungs, each breath clouding before you. Bare branches, skeletal against a pale sky, seem to shiver in the biting wind. It is a quiet, stark landscape, far removed from the city's clamor, but no less fraught with the hidden perils of Elizabethan life, especially when illness strikes. Your own survival from the terrifying fever years ago has branded a profound, almost cynical wisdom into your soul. You'll remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic ingredients of the apothecaries. You'll recall the sheer irony that often, doing nothing, was a safer gamble than seeking their aggressive, theory-driven cures. Now, walking this desolate lane, you approach a small, isolated cottage, its chimney emitting a thin wisp of smoke. This is the dwelling of old Goody Margery, a woman known for her knowledge of herbs and healing, but also, whispered about in hushed tones, for her cunning. Goody Margery is a figure of quiet importance in her village. When a child suffered from the falling sickness, what we would now call epilepsy, it was her soothing poultices and calming teas, made from valerian and other roots, that often brought temporary peace. When a fever took hold, her willow bark infusions eased the aches, and her foxglove might strengthen a faltering heart. These remedies, though unscientific, held genuine, if uncontrolled, medicinal power. Yet her very effectiveness is her greatest danger. In an age steeped in superstition, where disease was often attributed to divine wrath or malevolent spirits, a woman who could heal when learned doctors failed became suspect. You recall the cruel irony. While the wealthy could afford the deadliest, most aggressive treatments from esteemed physicians, often dying faster for their privilege, the poor often turned to folk healers like Goody Margery. And if her remedies proved too effective, or if a patient simply recovered through sheer luck, the whisper of witchcraft could easily follow. Her power to heal, perceived as unnatural, might lead to accusations, a trial, and the terrifying spectacle of execution. In this dark period, the practical, even genuinely helpful, knowledge of women could become a death sentence, condemned by fear and ignorance, much as Shakespeare's plays explored the dangerous superstitions that ruled human hearts. As you pass Goody Margery's cottage, the faint scent of wood smoke and dried herbs drifting on the frigid air, you feel a profound sadness. Here, true healing, however humble, walked a perilous path, forever shadowed by the fear of accusation. This grim reality, where effective care could be fatally misconstrued, serves as a final, quiet testament to the terrifying world of Elizabethan medicine. A landscape where survival was a constant, harrowing gamble, and wisdom often came at a terrible cost. The wind howls outside your small cottage, rattling the leaded glass of the window panes and seeping cold draughts through the old timbers. You huddle closer to the smoky hearth, the meager fire offering more scent than true warmth against the biting chill of the 1611 winter. The air is thick with wood smoke, a familiar, comforting companion in the long, dark evenings. A persistent, hacking cough echoes from the corner where your younger kin, perhaps a niece or nephew, sleeps fitfully. A familiar sound, a common melody of Elizabethan life. This sound brings a chilling clarity to your own terrifying survival years ago. You remember the physician's confident pronouncements of melancholic humors, and the subsequent violent purges that often left you weaker than the fever itself. The prestigious education of such doctors, you now realize, made them confidently wrong, their treatments actively killing patients rather than curing them. You recall the barber-surgeon's brutal cupping, draining precious lifeblood, leaving you dizzy and frail. You think of the wise woman's potent herbs, a risky gamble between healing and harm, and the quack's false promises at the London Fair, whose elixirs induced violent sickness. Even the formidable plague doctor, with his beaked mask and acrid theriac, laden with toxic compounds, seemed designed more to hasten death than to stave it off. Each intervention, you now know, was an assault, a terrifying choice where seeking treatment often meant choosing your method of death. The grim truth, hard-won and etched into your very bones, settles with a quiet finality. In this age, before germ theory, before anesthesia, before antibiotics, the most learned individuals, those esteemed for their medical knowledge, often caused the greatest harm. Their aggressive treatments, eagerly embraced by the wealthy who could afford such rigorous care, ironically led to faster demise, a cruel twist of class medicine. Your own miraculous endurance, a testament to sheer luck, and perhaps a stubborn will, taught you a profound lesson. The best medicine, in many instances, was no medicine at all. To trust the body's own fierce silent battle, to simply survive the onslaught of both disease and cure, became the truest path to health. As the wind outside slowly quiets to a mournful sigh, and the hearth fire burns down to embers, a quiet contemplation wraps around you. Life in Shakespeare's England is a constant gamble, a tapestry woven with hardship and resilience. But sometimes, in the dark corners of history, even quiet avoidance can be a powerful act of survival, a gentle path towards rest. You recognize that trusting in your body's own inherent strength was, perhaps, the most profound cure of all. The year is 1612, a bright but brisk spring morning on Bankside, London. You stand near the timbered walls of the Globe Theatre, the grand playhouse that Shakespeare himself helps manage, and where his magnificent plays are brought to life. The air carries the distinct scent of fresh sawdust from repairs, mingled with the earthy dampness from the nearby Thames. But beneath these familiar aromas, there's a different current today, a whisper of unease that travels faster than any news crier. Talk of the sweating sickness, a terrifying new outbreak. You observe the company's players, particularly a younger actor, perhaps fresh from a successful performance of The Tempest *, moving with a palpable anxiety. He paces near the tiring house, the backstage area where actors dressed and prepared, his usually confident strides now edged with a nervous energy. The threat of a widespread illness like the plague or this new sweating sickness is not merely a personal medical concern in Elizabethan London. It is an economic catastrophe. When diseases spread, public gatherings, including the beloved playhouses, are swiftly closed by city orders, directly threatening the livelihoods of everyone from the leading player to the stage boy. Your own harrowing survival from a fever years prior has left you with a deep understanding of this era's medical landscape. You remember the physician's confident yet often fatal diagnoses, the barber-surgeon's crude bloodletting, the apothecary's toxic concoctions. Against a virulent, fast-spreading illness like the sweating sickness, such cures are not only useless but actively dangerous. No amount of purging, bleeding, or theriac, those elaborate, often mercury-laced cure-alls, could stem the invisible tide of contagion. The irony is stark. For an actor who breathes life into words, their very existence depends on crowds gathering. Yet those gatherings are the very vectors for the diseases that shut down their world. The young actor glances nervously towards the entrance, imagining the official posting of the closure order, the red cross on the theatre door. This threat, lurking always at the edge of Elizabethan life, means not just sickness, but starvation for many. You realize that even for those who manage to avoid contracting the illness, the societal cure for disease, isolation and closure, brings its own form of suffering, a financial fever that can be just as devastating. As the morning sun catches the theatre's flags, waving bravely against the sky, a grim contemplation settles over you. In this era, survival means not only battling the disease itself, often worsened by misguided medicine, but also navigating the economic and social fallout of its relentless, unpredictable spread. The actor's fear is a universal one, deeply human, the terror of the unknown, the helplessness against a world where health is fleeting, and the very act of seeking solace or entertainment is a constant, terrifying gamble. The year is 1612, and you stand amidst the bustling throng in the yard of the Globe Theatre on Bankside, London. The wooden structure, a vibrant hub of entertainment, buzzes with anticipation. The air is warm, thick with the shared breath and body heat of hundreds of groundlings. The standing audience who pay a penny to watch from the open-air pit. The mingled scents of stale ale, sweat, and perhaps a bruised orange tossed from the galleries, create a heady atmosphere, a sensory tapestry of collective human experience. You crane your neck for a better view of the stage, jostled by your neighbors, their coarse wool cloaks brushing against your jerkin. The roar of the crowd, the cries of vendors hawking nuts and fruit, and the distant call for silence as the actors prepare to begin, all contribute to a powerful sense of community. This is where stories come alive, where Shakespeare's words echo across the wooden O, drawing laughter and tears from every soul present. Yet for all its joy, this crowded yard is also a crucible, a potent breeding ground for the very diseases that plagued this era. Your own harrowing survival from a fever years ago has etched a profound, almost instinctive awareness into your mind. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal efficiency of the barber-surgeon, the unpredictable nature of the wise woman's herbs, and the toxic remedies of the plague doctor. Against illnesses like the dreaded sweating sickness, which recently threatened to close the globe, or the ever-present plague, these interventions proved futile, even harmful. Here, in this vibrant, packed space, you are acutely aware of the shared air, the invisible exchange of breath. The collective body heat, so comforting on a cool day, also serves as a reminder of the swift and silent spread of contagion. There is no escape from it here, no separating oneself from the invisible threads of illness that bind humanity in this age. The pleasure of the play, the communal joy, comes with a constant, unspoken risk. As the trumpet fanfare signals the start of the play, and the first lines of verse fill the open air, a quiet reflection settles within you. In this age, the pursuit of joy, of community, of shared stories, is always shadowed by the fragility of life. You realize that while you survived your own fever by, perhaps, the simple act of avoiding further harmful cures, the world around you is a constant reminder of the thin line between health and sickness, joy and sorrow, a truth Shakespeare himself knew intimately, and often explored in the profound tapestry of his plays. The year is 1613, a quiet afternoon in London, and you step into the cramped, low-ceilinged workshop of Master Elias, a scrivener renowned for his meticulous hand. The air is dry and faintly metallic, thick with the scent of parchment, lamp oil, and the sharp, indelible aroma of gall ink. The only sounds are the rhythmic scratch of quills on paper, and the soft rustle of documents being turned. Light, pale and insufficient, filters through a single leaded glass window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. You watch Master Elias, an older man with spectacles perched on his nose, his body hunched over a heavy ledger. His hand, perpetually stained with dark ink, moves with impressive speed, yet you notice a slight tremor, a subtle stiffness in his fingers. He pauses to sharpen his quill with a small, sharp knife, then instinctively brings the tip to his lips, a common habit among scriveners to moisten the quill and ensure a smooth flow of ink. This seemingly innocent gesture, repeated countless times a day, is a hidden peril of Elizabethan life. The ink of this era, often contains lead compounds, used to achieve its deep black color and permanence. Over years, this constant, unwitting ingestion of lead can insidiously poison the body, leading to tremors, paralysis, stomach pains, and a slow, wasting illness, symptoms that would be bewildering to the physicians of the time. This is a daily, occupational hazard, a slow poison absorbed unknowingly, far removed from the dramatic fever you once endured. You remember your own terrifying battle against fever years ago, and the confident yet ultimately harmful cures offered by physicians. You consider Master Elias. If he were to fall gravely ill from this lead poisoning, the learned doctor, adhering to humoral theory, would likely attribute his tremors to an excess of cold and dry black bile. He would prescribe aggressive purges of antimony, or debilitating bloodletting, convinced he was rebalancing the humors. Such treatments would only weaken the scrivener further, perhaps accelerating his decline, all while completely missing the true, unseen cause of his suffering. As Master Elias dips his quill once more, his cramped hand continuing its tireless work, you feel a profound sense of grim irony. Here, in the heart of daily life, amidst the very tools of literacy and commerce, lies a slow, invisible threat. The dangers in Shakespeare's England are not always sudden plagues or agonizing surgeries. Sometimes they are insidious, built into the very fabric of existence. And for these silent maladies, the sophisticated yet fundamentally misguided medicine of the age could offer no true understanding, only further suffering. You leave the workshop with a quiet reflection on the many ways one could die in this challenging world, often without truly knowing the cause. The year is 1616. A cold, late night in Stratford-upon-Avon, the very year Shakespeare himself would pass from this world. You stand by the window of a small study, peering through the leaded panes into the quiet domestic scene within. A scholar, his face illuminated by the flickering candlelight, is hunched over a heavy, leather-bound tome. The air in the room, even to your imagined senses, smells of old parchment, dried ink, and the subtle waxy scent of the burning tallow. The only sound is the soft rustle of pages being turned, a testament to diligent, solitary learning. The scholar, perhaps a local schoolmaster or even a retired physician, pores over the intricate diagrams and Latin texts of a revered medical authority, likely Galen or Hippocrates. His brow is furrowed, his expression one of deep concentration, seeking wisdom from centuries past. He reads of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and their delicate balance, the supposed key to all health and illness. He studies complex theories of diet and seasonal influences, believing that understanding these ancient principles unlocks the secrets of the human body. Your own harrowing survival from a fever years ago resonates deeply as you watch him. You remember the confidently wrong diagnoses rooted in these very texts, the aggressive purges, the debilitating bloodletting, the toxic remedies prepared with such unwavering conviction. You recall how the learned physicians, for all their prestigious education and diligent study of these ancient authorities, often proved to be the most dangerous of healers. Their treatments, confidently applied, were actively killing patients, exacerbating conditions, and leaving bodies weaker than the disease itself. The irony is profound and grim. Here, in the quiet pursuit of knowledge, the scholar absorbs theories that, though intellectually elaborate, were fundamentally flawed. Centuries would pass before germ theory, anesthesia, or antibiotics would reveal the true mechanisms of disease and healing. The greatest minds of Shakespeare's era, with all their dedication, were grappling in the dark, their compasses pointing in directions that often led to peril. As the candle flickers lower, casting dancing shadows on the scholar's face, a quiet contemplation settles over you. Your own life, hard won from the brink, is a living testament to this era's medical paradox. You survived not through the learned interventions but in spite of them, by the stubborn, miraculous resilience of the human spirit. In a world where even the most educated were confidently wrong, and their elaborate treatments often deadly, the ultimate wisdom was sometimes simply to trust in your body's fierce fight, and perhaps, to avoid the healers altogether. As the night deepens, you find a gentle peace in this profound if dark understanding. The year is 1614, and a somber hush has fallen over your small timbered home in Stratford-upon-Avon, a quiet reflection of the stillness outside. The winter air, though warmed by a crackling hearth, still carries a persistent chill. You sit by a trundle bed, pulled from beneath the main bed, gently wiping the clammy brow of a feverish child. Their small body trembles with alternating chills and burning heat, and their breath is quick and shallow. The air around them smells faintly of sweat, and the desperate sweet scent of crushed rose petals you've laid nearby, hoping to ward off harmful miasmas. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has branded a profound, almost instinctive wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. Each memory is a testament to the grim irony that often, doing nothing, or relying on simple, compassionate care, was a safer gamble than seeking their aggressive, theory-driven cures. This deep-seated wariness now guides your hand as you tend to the vulnerable life before you. You know that a learned physician, if called, would likely observe the child's restless sleep and fevered flush, then perhaps insist on a painful bloodletting with leeches or a lancet, believing it would draw out the hot and dry humors. They might prescribe a powerful purge of antimony, a toxic heavy metal, convinced they were cleansing the body, but instead leaving the child weak and dehydrated. Their diagnosis would be grand, their methods aggressive, rooted in centuries of flawed understanding of the human body. But you choose a different path. You offer sips of weak barley water, hoping to cool the internal fire and keep the child hydrated. You place cool, damp cloths on their forehead, seeking only to ease the physical discomfort, to bring a moment of simple respite. You speak in soft, soothing tones, offering comfort rather than intervention. There are no expensive potions, no invasive procedures, no grand pronouncements of a cure. You understand that in this terrifying world before germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, the safest intervention is often the gentle, patient act of allowing the body to fight its own battle. As the child stirs slightly, murmuring in their sleep, a quiet reflection settles within you. This is the essence of survival in Shakespeare's England. A fragile hope born of practical inaction, a desperate trust in the body's own miraculous, often brutal resilience. The grim humor is not lost on you. Sometimes, the greatest act of love, the truest path to healing, is to simply tend, to comfort, and to wait, hoping that life itself proves to be the most potent medicine of all. The biting cold of the 1614 winter still clings to the timbers of your Stratford home, even as the hearth fire crackles, doing its best to defy the chill. The fever in the trundle bed, however, remains stubbornly entrenched, a relentless force against the small child's fragile body. Their skin is flushed, their breathing shallow, and the low moans pierce the quiet air. Your barley water and cool cloths have offered comfort, but not cure. Now, you turn to another simple, homespun remedy, one passed down through generations of watchful mothers and helpful neighbors. You stand by the hearth, the warmth, a welcome solace, preparing a poultice. The sharp, acrid scent of hot vinegar rises from a small iron pot, mingling with the pungent, almost aggressive, aroma of freshly ground mustard seed. You mix the two into a thick, fiery paste, a common practice to create a drawing plaster, believed to pull the fever's heat, or noxious vapors, from the body. It's a powerful smell, one that clears the sinuses and pricks the eyes, a stark, visceral reminder of the raw, unrefined nature of home healing in this era. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has instilled in you a deep skepticism, a profound wariness of the medical elite. You recall the physician's aggressive bloodletting, weakening you further, and the toxic purges of antimony that ravaged your stomach. You think of the barber-surgeon's crude cupping, or the plague doctor's elaborate theriac, laden with mercury and opium, each a perilous gamble that often inflicted more harm than the disease itself. This simple mustard and vinegar poultice, while certainly uncomfortable, feels like a gentle, honest intervention compared to those confident, yet tragically wrong, assaults on your system. You spread the warm, pungent paste onto a piece of old linen, then carefully place it on the child's chest, avoiding the delicate skin of their face. A gasp escapes them, and then a faint cry, as the mustard begins its work, stimulating the skin, bringing a fierce heat to the surface. It is a harsh sensation, but one believed to be beneficial, drawing the illness outward. You sit close, murmuring reassurances, stroking their fevered brow, trusting more in the raw, natural properties of common plants and your own compassionate care than in any grand theory of humors or celestial alignments. As the child eventually settles, the strong scent of mustard and vinegar filling the small room, a quiet reflection settles within you. In this terrifying world, before modern medicine brought its clarity and its cures, sometimes the best course of action was to avoid the interventions of the Shakespeare learned altogether. The irony is grimly clear. The prestigious education of physicians often made them confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients. For this child, as for you, true survival often lay not in sophisticated, costly remedies, but in the enduring power of simple acts, a stubborn trust in the body's own fierce fight, and the quiet, desperate hope that less harm might ultimately lead to healing. The year is 1615, and a raw, biting wind whips across the churchyard in Stratford-upon-Avon. The sky is a uniform, dreary grey, casting a sombre light on the weathered tombstones and the ancient yew trees. You stand at a respectful distance, your breath pluming in the frigid air, listening to the rhythmic, unsettling clang of the sexton's spade biting into the frost-hardened soil. Each thud against the earth echoes with a grim finality, a sound as constant and pervasive in Elizabethan life as the ringing of church bells or the distant cries of street vendors. The air smells of damp earth, winter decay, and the ever-present chill of mortality. This solemn scene is a familiar one, a stark reminder of the fragile thread of life in this era. For many years now, your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever has granted you a unique, almost cynical wisdom. You remember the confident pronouncements of physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. Each memory is a testament to the grim irony that often, doing nothing, or relying on simple, compassionate care, was a safer gamble than seeking their aggressive, theory-driven cures. You watch the sexton, a man whose trade keeps him intimately acquainted with the town's departed, as he deepens the grave. You know that within these hallowed grounds lie countless souls who, like you, fell ill. Some, no doubt, bravely endured the fever only to succumb to the physician's bloodletting, drained of their very life force by leeches or lancets. Others may have weakened under powerful purges of antimony, or been poisoned by mercury-laced theriac from a confident, beaked plague doctor. And still more perhaps died from the inevitable infections following a barber-surgeon's crude attempt at a cure. The churchyard, in its quiet solemnity, stands as a testament to the devastating efficacy of Elizabethan medicine. The sexton pauses, leaning on his spade, and you reflect on the pervasive presence of death in Shakespeare's world, a theme that echoes throughout his plays, from the gravedigger in Hamlet to the many characters lost to illness. It is a reality that shapes every family, every community. You have learned a profound, if dark, lesson. In a world before germ theory, anesthesia, or antibiotics, where prestigious education often made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, the greatest act of survival was often a desperate refusal of intervention. To simply let the body fight its own brutal battle, sometimes, was the only true path to healing. As the clang of the spade resumes, digging deeper into the frozen earth, you understand that this quiet place is filled with the stories of those who, in seeking a cure, inadvertently chose their method of death. The year is 1615, late afternoon in Stratford-upon-Avon, and the heavy, mournful clang of the church bell begins its slow, deliberate toll. Each deep, resonant note vibrates through the cold air, carrying with it the somber news of another soul's departure from this world. The sound is familiar, a constant companion to Elizabethan life, yet it always carries a fresh weight, a stark reminder of the ever-present shadow of mortality. You stand by your hearth, the warmth a quiet comfort, listening to the echoing peals fade into the growing twilight. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has granted you a profound, if dark, understanding of the narratives behind these tolls. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the learned physicians, They're costly, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies prepared by apothecaries, and the terrifying figure of the plague doctor with his beaked mask and useless theriac. Each memory is a testament to the grim irony that often, doing nothing, or relying on simple, compassionate care, was a safer gamble than seeking their aggressive, theory-driven cures. You think of those for whom this bell now tolls. Perhaps it is a child, like the one you tended, who succumbed not to the fever itself, but to the physician's bloodletting, drained of their very life force by leeches or a lancet. Perhaps a wealthy merchant like Master Hemming, who died faster from powerful purges of antimony, or mercury poisoning, eagerly administered by a confident doctor steeped in astrological medicine. Perhaps a woman, like the midwife Mistress Alara, whose effective herbal remedies led to accusations and execution, another life lost to the era's dangerous superstitions, a fate Shakespeare's characters too often flirted with when defying convention. The bell does not differentiate, it simply marks the end of a life, often hastened by the very hands meant to save it. As the final, lingering note of the bell fades into the deepening twilight, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, now living with the hard-won wisdom that in a terrifying world before germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, prestigious education often made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients. You understand with a chilling clarity that avoiding doctors altogether, or at least their most aggressive interventions, was often the best medicine. The fire glows warmly in the hearth, casting gentle light upon your face. This grim humor, this profound irony, is a quiet truth that echoes through the very fabric of Shakespeare's England. You recognize that trusting in your body's own fierce, silent fight and the simple comfort of home was perhaps the most profound cure of all, leaving you with a peaceful if poignant contemplation of human resilience in the face of insurmountable odds. The year is 1616, and the air in the bustling kitchen of a grand London manor house is thick, almost opaque, with the greasy steam of roasting meat and simmering stews. The immense hearth glows fiercely, radiating a relentless heat that prickles your skin and beads sweat on your brow. The mingled aromas of spit-roasted capon, sharp spices, and the heavy scent of rendered fat create a rich, overwhelming tapestry of smell. You observe the head cook, a burly man named Master Giles, his face flushed and glistening with exertion, his movements precise, despite the sweltering warmth. Master Giles, perpetually bent over bubbling cauldrons and sizzling pans, epitomizes the strenuous realities of service in a wealthy household. Despite his robust frame, you notice a weary slump in his shoulders, and a persistent, almost imperceptible tremor in his hands as he chops vegetables. He often complains of a sour stomach and a constant lethargy, which the manor's physician, a man of prestige, has solemnly declared to be an excess of cold, viscous phlegm, brought on by his unremitting work near heat. This diagnosis, rooted in humoral theory, sounds strikingly similar to the confident, yet ultimately flawed pronouncements you encountered in your own terrifying illness years ago. You remember your own desperate dance with fever, where physicians, prestigious education often made them confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients. For Master Giles, his status as a valued servant means access to the manor's doctor, and this access, ironically, poses a deadly threat. You know what awaits him: aggressive purging drafts of antimony, a toxic heavy metal intended to expel the phlegm, or perhaps a debilitating session of bloodletting with leeches, meant to rebalance his humors. Such treatments would only weaken his already strained body, leaving him vulnerable to further illness, or simply hastening his decline, all while completely missing the true causes of his discomfort. The intense heat, the rich diet, and the relentless labor. The grim humor of it all is stark. The very wealth that affords Master Giles medical attention could be his undoing, much as it often proved fatal for the gentry. The simpler, less invasive remedies of common folk, perhaps a quiet cup of ginger tea or a less strenuous shift, would be dismissed by the learned physician, yet might offer more true relief. As Master Giles wipes his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a smear of grease and flour, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, the greatest dangers often came not from ignorance, but from the most educated, confidently wrong hands. The relentless bustle of the kitchen, with its hidden perils and misguided cures, serves as a poignant reminder that in Shakespeare's England, navigating the terrifying world of medicine often meant choosing your method of death. The year is 1616, late winter, and the cold, unyielding grip of the season permeates the very stones of your small farmhouse in the Warwickshire countryside. You stand in the larder, a cool, dark chamber off the main living space, assessing the scant winter stores. The air is heavy with the mingled scents of smoked ham, dried apples, and the earthy aroma of root vegetables stored in sand. A thin, grey light filters through a small, shuttered opening, barely illuminating the rough wooden shelves that hold the family's precarious sustenance. Each barrel of salted beef, each shriveled turnip, is a precious bulwark against the ever-present threat of hunger, a threat as pervasive as disease in this challenging era. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has branded a profound wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, their costly, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. You learned with grim certainty that often, doing nothing, or relying on simpler, less invasive care, was a safer gamble than seeking their theory-driven cures. This hard-won knowledge now colors your view of the world, especially when you consider the health of your struggling neighbors. For a poor farmer, the options for medical care are starkly limited. There are no learned physicians, with their exorbitant fees and elaborate astrological diagnoses, to be called to a humble larder. There are no apothecaries to grind costly, mercury-laced, theriac, or antimony purges. Such aggressive treatments, often fatal, are, paradoxically, a luxury of the wealthy. You think of the rich merchants and gentry in London, able to afford the most rigorous interventions, only to often succumb faster to the zealous ministrations of their doctors. For the farmer, illness means relying on the local wise woman, perhaps, or simply enduring, trusting in the body's own resilience and whatever humble remedies nature provides. You reach for a small pouch of dried herbs, perhaps chamomile for a stomachache, or willow bark for a headache, simple comforts against the inevitable ailments that winter brings. The grim humor of it all settles over you. For the poor, the very lack of access to formal, expensive Elizabethan medicine might, in a strange twist of fate, be their greatest protection. It forces reliance on less harmful, if often ineffective, folk wisdom, or simply the sheer stubbornness of the human body to survive. As you close the larder door, plunging the remaining provisions back into shadow, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, now understanding that in a terrifying world before germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, prestigious education often made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients. For many, understanding that avoiding doctors might be the best medicine was not a choice, but a harsh, vital truth of survival. The year is 1616, late afternoon in London, and the bustling energy of Cheapside Market is slowly fading as merchants pack up their wares. The air, usually thick with the cries of hawkers and the scent of fresh bread, now carries a sharper edge of approaching evening, mingled with the pervasive smell of city grime and damp stone. You navigate the thinning crowd, your gaze drawn to a figure huddled against the cold stone wall of a guildhall. This is a beggar, his threadbare cloak offering scant protection against the chill, his face partially obscured by matted hair. As you draw closer, a ripple of avoidance passes through the few remaining passers-by. You see why. The beggar's exposed hands are covered in angry, weeping sores, and blotches mar his face, despite his efforts to conceal them. A quiet shiver of fear, a primal dread, courses through the onlookers, a fear that speaks not only of pity but also of deep-seated apprehension. This is the public's fear of leprosy, a terrifying disease that, though largely receding by Shakespeare's time, still cast a long, horrifying shadow. Any visible, persistent skin ailment could be mistaken for it. leading to social ostracization and a life of desperate solitude. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has branded a profound wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. For this beggar, such help is not even an option. He is of the lowest class, reliant on the meager charity of strangers, or perhaps the limited, often superstitious remedies of other impoverished souls. There would be no learned doctor with his grand diagnoses, no costly purges of antimony or mercury, which ironically might be a blessing, saving him from treatments that would only hasten his decline. You consider his fate. Even if his sores are merely a common skin ailment made worse by exposure and poor nutrition, the societal reaction is one of terror and avoidance. He will live a life apart, his suffering a visible testament to the era's profound ignorance about contagion and hygiene. In this world before germ theory offered understanding, and before antibiotics offered true cure, the visually afflicted were often condemned not just by their illness, but by the fear it engendered. As you drop a small coin into his outstretched, scarred hand, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, the greatest tragedy was not just the disease, but the systemic lack of true compassion and effective care for those most vulnerable. The beggar's silent suffering is a stark, poignant reminder of the relentless challenges of life and the brutal reality of medicine in Shakespeare's England. The year is 1616, and a biting wind whips through London, chilling you to the bone. You find yourself outside Bethlehem Royal Hospital, commonly known as Bedlam, its formidable stone walls rising starkly against the grey sky. There is no bustling market here, no clamour of tradesmen. Only an austere quiet, broken by the distant, occasional clinking of chains and a low, disembodied moan. The air is damp and cold, carrying a faint, indescribable institutional smell of unwashed linen and stale air. You gain entry to one of its wards, a long, low-ceilinged room, stark and unadorned. Pale light filters through narrow, high-set windows, casting weak shadows on the whitewashed walls. On simple cots or bundles of straw a few souls lie or sit, lost in their own worlds. Some stare blankly, others rock gently, their faces etched with a profound, quiet despair. This is where minds fractured by the complexities of life are sent, often misdiagnosed and utterly misunderstood, in an age before psychology or compassionate care. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever years ago has branded a profound wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill the body. Here the Taffic physicians of the mind, operating under the same flawed humoral theory, would attempt to rebalance the humors of the brain. They would attribute deep melancholy to an excess of black bile, or frenzied delirium to hot yellow bile. Their solutions were equally brutal: powerful emetics to induce vomiting, violent purges to cleanse the system, or relentless bloodletting, all believed to drain away the offending humors and restore sanity. You recall the metallic taste of antimony, the dizzying weakness of being bled, the intense discomfort of those misguided interventions. Applied to a fevered body, they were dangerous. Applied to a fragile, suffering mind, they were simply cruel and utterly ineffective. For these lost souls, the trauta care, offered within Bedlam's walls, for all its solemnity, was often just another terrifying method of death, or at best, a prolonged suffering. No gentle understanding, no quiet counsel, only physical assaults on a mind that desperately needed comfort, not further torment. As you stand in the austere quiet, observing the profound isolation of each individual, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, now understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, the greatest tragedy extended even to the human spirit. The grim irony is stark. Even here, where compassion should be paramount, The interventions were often more destructive than any natural course of mental illness. You leave Bedlam with a heavy heart, understanding that in Shakespeare's England, navigating the terrifying world of medicine, for both body and mind, was a constant, harrowing gamble, and often, the least harmful path was simply to be left alone. The year is 1616, a particularly dreary, rainy afternoon in London, the kind that seeps into your bones and clings to the very stones of the city. The air is heavy with moisture, carrying the mingled scents of wet cobblestones, wood smoke from countless hearths, and the distant earthy aroma of the Thames. You shelter beneath a dripping awning, watching the few passers-by hurry through the glistening streets. Among them you notice an older man, a veteran soldier by the worn cut of his doublet, leaning heavily on a carved walking stick. He limps, each step a deliberate, painful effort, and you see the subtle grimace that flits across his face, even as he attempts to maintain a stoic bearing. His cloak, damp with the incessant drizzle, seems to cling to old scars that ripple beneath the fabric on his arm. This is the lingering reality of a soldier's life in Shakespeare's England. A constant, gnawing ache from old wounds, perhaps a stiff knee from a long-forgotten battle, or a rheumatic pain that flares with every damp spell. For such chronic suffering, the medicine of the era, so aggressive against acute fevers, was particularly ill-equipped. Your own harrowing survival from fever years ago has branded a profound wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. For this soldier, seeking their aid would likely mean more suffering. A physician might diagnose his aching joints as an excess of fano generale, cold and moist phlegm, a common misdiagnosis for various bodily discomforts, then prescribe vigorous purges with antimony to dry out his system, or apply leeches to draw away the noxious vapors believed to cause his pain. Such interventions, far from bringing comfort, would only weaken him further, adding digestive distress or blood loss to his existing chronic agony. You reflect on the grim irony. For conditions like chronic pain, where no external signs of acute illness were present, the doctor's humoral theories still held sway, leading to active interventions that would strip the patient of their vitality, without ever addressing the true source of their discomfort. There was no understanding of inflammation, no true pain relief beyond crude opiates that might dull the senses but did nothing for the underlying ailment. As the soldier finally disappears around a corner, his limping gait growing fainter, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, enduring chronic pain meant a lifetime of quiet suffering, often worsened by misguided attempts at cure. The subtle aches and pains of daily life were, for many, a testament to the fact that sometimes, the best medicine was simply learning to live with the body's complaints, trusting its own capacity for endurance in a world that offered so little true relief. The year is 1616. Late afternoon in a grand London manor house kitchen, a place of relentless heat and activity. The air is dense, thick with the aroma of roasted fowl, pungent herbs, and the sweet tang of freshly baked pies cooling on a rack. The rhythmic clang of iron pots and the hiss of water on a hot hearth create a cacophony that usually speaks of abundance. But suddenly a sharp cry, quickly stifled, cuts through the din, followed by the terrifying sound of shattering crockery. You turn to see a young scullery maid, her face ashen, clutching her arm as blood wells quickly from a deep gash caused by a broken pewter plate. Panic flares in the eyes of the other servants. This is a common, brutal reality of daily life in this age, where accidents, especially in a busy kitchen with sharp knives and hot liquids, are frequent and often deadly. One of the older housekeepers, Mistress Blythe, immediately tears a strip from her own linen apron, her movements frantic but purposeful. This is the era's immediate, makeshift first aid, born of desperation rather than medical knowledge. Mistress Blythe quickly binds the makeshift tourniquet tightly around the maid's arm, above the wound, cinching it with a wooden spoon she snatches from a nearby counter. The maid whimpers, her eyes wide with shock and pain. The housekeeper's face is grim, her focus entirely on stemming the flow of blood. This desperate act, while it may stop the bleeding, is fraught with its own dangers. Without understanding blood circulation, a tourniquet applied too tightly or left for too long can cause irreparable damage to the limb, or even lead to its loss. And more immediately, without any concept of germ theory, the torn, unwashed linen and the hands applying it are teeming with invisible threats. You remember your own harrowing survival from fever years ago, and the confident, yet ultimately harmful cures offered by physicians and barber-surgeons. For this scullery maid, a formal barber-surgeon might be called, who would stitch the wound with unsterilized thread and needles, perhaps applying a poultice of herbs and animal dung. Substances believed to draw out illness, but instead introducing virulent infection. The true enemy, unseen and unfelt, would begin its silent, deadly work the moment the blood touched the open air, and touched those unwashed cloths. As the maid, now pale and trembling, is led away for what passes as care, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, even simple accidents held profound peril. The makeshift tourniquet, a symbol of desperate human ingenuity, also stands as a testament to profound ignorance. You realize that in Shakespeare's England, navigating the terrifying world of medicine often meant that the immediate, brutal attempts at help for wounds like these often led to the far greater, unseen enemy of infection, turning a mere accident into a life-threatening ordeal. The year is 1616, and a fragile quiet has settled over your small cottage in Stratford-upon-Avon. The evening light, softened by the leaded panes, casts long shadows as you carefully carry a wooden bowl to a simple bed. The air is mild tonight, smelling of banked embers and the faint, comforting aroma of herbs drying above the hearth. You watch as a convalescent, perhaps a young relative or even your own weary self slowly regaining strength, tentatively sips a thin, nourishing broth. Its warmth is gentle, the taste subtle, a world away from the aggressive, acrid concoctions that once filled sick rooms. Your own harrowing survival from a terrifying fever, years ago, has branded a profound wisdom into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies of the apothecaries. Each sip of this simple broth, each moment of quiet rest, serves as a stark contrast to the grim odyssey of cures you endured. You think of the physician's purges, laced with antimony, that ravaged your stomach, draining strength rather than illness. You recall the dizzying weakness that followed the barber-surgeon's crude bloodletting, the deliberate extraction of life-giving fluid. Even the plague doctor's potent theriac, laden with mercury and opium, had pushed you closer to the precipice, a terrifying mixture whose cure was often worse than the disease itself. These were the confident interventions of learned men, their prestigious education making them dangerously wrong, their treatments actively killing patients. But here, in this quiet moment of recovery, there are no aggressive interventions. Only the warmth of the broth, the gentle quiet and the slow, miraculous work of the body healing itself. This is the profound, if grim, irony you have learned. That often, in this era before germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, the most effective medicine was simply to endure, to nurture the body, and to avoid the confident, yet ultimately destructive, interventions of the medical establishment. The wealthy, ironically, often died faster from their ability to afford the most zealous, aggressive treatments. As the last spoonful of broth is taken, and the convalescent's eyes gently close in natural sleep, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where seeking treatment often meant choosing your method of death, the true path to healing was often found in humble inaction, compassionate care, and a fierce, stubborn will to live. You find a gentle peace in this profound, hard-won understanding, a testament to resilience in the face of insurmountable odds. The year is 1616, late afternoon in Stratford-upon-Avon, and a gentle warmth from the banked fire in your cottage hearth spreads through your old bones. The air is still, carrying the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke and beeswax polish. You sit in your favorite armchair, a hand-carved piece smoothed by years of use, and doze, the quiet rhythm of the afternoon lulling you towards rest. Your eyelids flutter, and a soft sigh escapes your lips, a sound born of contentment, but also of a long life lived, filled with memories of hardships and triumphs. You stir, roused by the distant caw of a rook, and your gaze drifts to the familiar patterns of the timbered walls. In the quiet of your thoughts, memories rise unbidden, a tapestry of agues and fevers past, the countless ailments that were simply a part of life in Shakespeare's England. You recall the searing heat of your own fever years ago, the terrifying weakness that followed, and the desperate decisions you were forced to make in the face of illness. You remember the learned physician's confident pronouncements, his elaborate diagnoses rooted in humoral theory, often attributing your suffering to an excess of yellow bile or black bile. His costly remedies, the aggressive purges of antimony, the debilitating bloodletting with leeches, and the metallic taste of toxic theriac from the plague doctor, each had promised a cure but delivered only further torment. You recalled the brutal hands of the barber-surgeon, his crude cupping and lancets, leaving you weaker, bleeding, and even the wise woman's potent herbs, though sometimes offering true relief like willow bark for pain, also carried the inherent risk of uncontrolled toxicity, or worse, the terrifying accusation of witchcraft. A grim humor touches your lips as you consider the irony of it all. The most prestigious education, the most confident hands, the most expensive treatments, these were often the most dangerous. For the wealthy, their privilege ironically made them more vulnerable, as their doctors steeped in flawed theory, actively bled and purged them to death. You, a humble soul, survived not because of these interventions, but often in spite of them, by the sheer, stubborn resilience of your own body, and perhaps, by a desperate instinctual refusal of further harm. As the daylight outside begins its slow fade, casting long peaceful shadows across your room, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are an old man now, a survivor, understanding with profound clarity that in a terrifying world before germ theory, anesthesia, or antibiotics, the truest path to healing was often to trust in the miraculous capacity of life itself. The best medicine, in many instances, was simply to avoid the doctors altogether, to tend gently to the body, and to let nature take its brutal yet often healing course. You find a gentle peace in this hard-won wisdom, a silent testament to the human spirit's enduring strength amidst the challenges of a bygone age. The year is 1616, a fresh spring morning in the Warwickshire countryside, the dew still clinging heavily to the meadow grasses. The air is cool and clean, carrying the earthy scent of wet soil and nascent green growth, a welcome contrast to the cramped streets of London. The only sounds are the chirping of larks and the gentle rustle of leaves as you, now older and wiser, carefully pick your way through the tall, glistening stalks. Your hands, calloused by years of toil, move with practiced precision, seeking specific plants for their medicinal properties. You carry a small wicker basket, collecting sprigs of willow, its bark known to ease aches and fevers, and delicate foxglove, its bell-shaped flowers beautiful yet dangerous. This meadow, alive with subtle remedies and hidden poisons, embodies the dual nature of healing in Shakespeare's England. You remember your own harrowing fever years ago, and the confident, yet ultimately harmful, cures offered by physicians and barber-surgeons. The wisdom of the formal doctors, based on flawed humoral theory, had proven deadly. Yet, here in nature, lay the true origins of some remedies. Willow bark, for instance, in its simple form, possessed compounds that genuinely eased pain and inflammation, a truth instinctively known by generations of folk healers. Foxglove, a powerful plant, could, in carefully measured doses, strengthen a weak heart, a medical marvel in an age without true understanding of the circulatory system. But this power was a double-edged sword. Without precise knowledge of dosage, the beneficial foxglove could easily become a fatal poison, its potent effects overwhelming the body. The line between remedy and toxin was perilously thin, often determined by intuition or sheer luck. You also recall the grim reality of witch trial risks. A woman, often a wise woman like old Goody Margery, who demonstrated too much success with such potent herbs, especially when learned doctors failed, could easily be accused of witchcraft. Her effective healing, born of generations of botanical knowledge, could lead to a terrifying trial and execution, condemned by fear and ignorance. The irony is stark. The official medicine of the age often killed through its aggressive, misguided treatments, while effective folk healing could kill through societal fear. As the sun slowly rises, burning off the dew, and the meadow begins to hum with the waking insects, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this complex, often terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, true healing was often a perilous dance with nature. You find a gentle peace in this profound, hard-won understanding, a testament to resilience, and the enduring human quest for comfort in a world that offered so little. The year is 1616, late afternoon in a forgotten corner of London, far from the grand guildhalls and the bustling markets. You descend into a cellar beneath a crumbling tenement, the air growing thick and heavy with strange, acrid fumes that sting your nostrils, a blend of sulfur, heated metals and something indescribably pungent. The flickering light from several small furnaces casts grotesque, dancing shadows on the stone walls, illuminating a bewildering array of glass vessels, alembics, retorts and bubbling flasks, all connected by serpentine tubes. This is the workshop of Master Corvus, an alchemist, a man driven by the ancient, mystical quest for universal knowledge, often including the elusive panacea, a cure for all ills. You watch Master Corvus, a gaunt figure with soot-stained hands and eyes that hold a feverish intensity. He pores over a bubbling crucible, stirring a dark, viscous liquid with a glass rod. He is not merely seeking to turn lead into gold, but to distill the very elixir of life, a universal remedy that he believes will banish all disease and prolong existence indefinitely. He speaks in hushed, earnest tones of the coca philosopher's stone, a substance capable of both transmuting base metals and healing all maladies. His confidence is absolute, rooted in esoteric knowledge and ancient alchemical texts. Your own harrowing survival from fever years ago resonates deeply here. You remember the physician's confident, yet ultimately harmful, diagnoses, the barber-surgeon's crude bloodletting, the apothecary's toxic concoctions. You recognize the same dangerous confidence in Master Corvus, though his methods are far more complex, and his substances even more perilous. His preparations often involve heavy metals like mercury and antimony, which he believes hold transformative powers, but which you know from your own experience with their toxic cures, are potent poisons. He might be unknowingly inhaling deadly fumes, his pursuit of universal health slowly destroying his own. The irony is profound. In his quest for a cure for everything, the alchemist often creates the very poisons that Elizabethan doctors, equally confident, would then administer as treatments. This frantic, often secret, pursuit of a magical cure embodies the era's desperate hope, and its profound ignorance. No amount of bubbling liquids or astrological calculations could reveal the true nature of disease or the subtle chemistry of healing. As Master Corvus carefully pours a shimmering metallic liquid into a small vial, believing he holds a step towards ultimate health, a quiet reflection settles within you. You are a survivor, understanding that in this terrifying world, where prestigious education made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients, even the most esoteric pursuits of healing were often fraught with unseen dangers. The alchemist's noble, if misguided, hope for a panacea, amidst the fumes and glass, serves as a poignant, final testament to the enduring human desire to conquer disease, and the perilous paths taken in a time before true understanding. The year is 1616, and the sun, a fiery orb, dips low over the gentle rolling hills of the Warwickshire countryside, casting long purple shadows across the familiar landscape. You stand by your cottage window, its leaded panes now softened by the golden hour, and watch the last light of day slowly fade. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from distant hearths, and the quiet hum of an evening settling in. This tranquil scene, so full of peace, holds a profound meaning for you, a survivor of a medical world that often offered death disguised as cure. Your journey through that terrifying landscape of Elizabethan medicine, years ago, has etched an indelible truth into your soul. You recall the fever's relentless fire, and the array of confident healers who, with their prestigious education, were often dangerously, terribly wrong. The esteemed physician, with his grand pronouncements of humoral imbalance, and his aggressive purges of antimony, had drained you of strength. The barber-surgeon, with his crude cupping and lancets, extracted precious lifeblood, weakening you further. Even the wise woman's potent herbs, though sometimes offering relief, were a gamble of toxicity, and carried the terrifying risk of accusation. And the plague doctor, cloaked in his beaked mask, offered a theriac so laden with mercury and opium, that it felt like a final, deliberate poisoning. Each memory is a stark testament to a time before germ theory, before anesthesia, before antibiotics, an age where seeking treatment often meant choosing your method of death. The irony is profound. The wealthier one was, the more access they had to these aggressive, ultimately harmful interventions, often hastening their demise. You, a humble soul, survived not because of these confident cures, but in spite of them. Your body's own stubborn resilience and perhaps a desperate, instinctual refusal of further harm proved to be your most potent allies. As the sun finally slips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, a quiet and hard-won understanding settles over you. The best medicine, in many instances of Elizabethan life, was simply to avoid the doctors altogether, to trust in the body's own fierce, silent battle, to find comfort in simple care, and to let nature, however brutal, take its course. This grim humor, this profound truth, echoes through the works of Shakespeare himself, reflecting the realities of human fragility and endurance that shaped his world. You turn from the window, the last vestiges of light fading, leaving the room in the gentle embrace of twilight. Your life, a testament to resilience, is a quiet reflection on the perilous journey of health and healing in a bygone age. And in this tranquil moment you find a deep, peaceful contemplation, understanding that sometimes, doing nothing at all was the greatest act of survival. The tallow candle on your bedside table flickers, a final hesitant dance before its flame shrinks to a tiny point, threatening to plunge the room into complete darkness. It is late evening, 1616, the very year Shakespeare himself would pass from this world, and a profound silence has settled upon your Stratford cottage. The air is still, cool and faintly scented with the last whisper of warm wax and old wood smoke. This quiet moment, as light gives way to dark, feels like a culmination, a peaceful resolution to a long and arduous journey. Your own harrowing survival from that terrifying fever years ago has etched an indelible truth into your soul. You remember the confidently wrong pronouncements of the physicians, their expensive, aggressive treatments designed not to cure but often to kill. You recall the brutal hands of the barber-surgeons, the toxic remedies prepared by apothecaries, and the terrifying figure of the plague doctor with his beaked mask and useless theriac. Each memory is a stark testament to the grim irony that often, doing nothing, or relying on simple, compassionate care, was a safer gamble than seeking their aggressive, theory-driven cures. The flicker of the dying flame catches the worn timber of your walls, highlighting the shadows where the unseen dangers of this era once lurked. You understand now with profound clarity that in a world before germ theory, anesthesia or antibiotics, prestigious education often made doctors confidently wrong, and their treatments actively killed patients. The cruel paradox of class medicine meant that the wealthy, eager to afford the finest care, often suffered the most aggressive, and ultimately fatal interventions. You, a humble soul, survived not because of their confident cures, but in spite of them, by the sheer stubborn resilience of your own body, and perhaps by a desperate, instinctual refusal of further harm. As the candle's flame finally gutters, shrinking to nothingness, a deep peace settles over you. The room is now enveloped in the soft, familiar embrace of darkness, leaving only the lingering scent of warm wax and the memory of a journey through fear. This quiet understanding, that avoiding doctors might be the best medicine, is not a cynical thought, but a hard-won wisdom, forged in the crucible of survival. You find a gentle rest in this profound, if darkly humorous contemplation. Your life, a testament to resilience, is a quiet reflection on the perilous journey of health and healing in a bygone age. It is a story woven into the very fabric of Shakespeare's era, connecting our distant past to the timeless human experience of facing the unknown with courage and a desperate hope for life. Sleep well,